Ji-Hoon didn't look up when the girl walked into his office. Another desperate family member trying to negotiate a debt they couldn't pay. He'd seen it 1,000 times, but then she offered herself, and suddenly this became interesting. You're definitely going to want to see how this whole thing unfolds, so make sure you're subscribed. Turn on notifications so you catch all my videos because they're all this good, no cap. Comment, "Let's go," if you're ready for this journey. All right, let's do this. I'll work for you, whatever you need. Just let my father go. The words left Cassie's mouth before she could take them back. Kang Ji-Hoon didn't even look up from the papers on his desk. His office in downtown Atlanta smelled like expensive cologne and something darker. Maybe fear. Cassie's hands were sweating, but she kept them pressed against her thighs, standing there in her grocery store uniform because she'd come straight from her shift. "Your father owes me $200,000. Ji-Hoon said finally, his accent making the numbers sound heavier somehow. What exactly can a 23-year-old cashier offer that's worth that much? Cassie's father, Samuel, sat in the corner of the office with bruises blooming across his face. He'd gotten involved with the wrong people trying to save their family restaurant back in Cameroon. Sent money to someone who turned out to be connected to Ji-Hoon's organization. Now the debt had followed him here. "Don't, Cassie, go home," her father croaked out. But she couldn't. Not when her father might not make it through another night. "I can work in your businesses," Cassie said, her voice stronger than she felt. "I can clean, I can cook, I can do books. I'm good with numbers. 5 years. I'll give you 5 years of work and you clear the debt." Ji-Hoon finally looked up. He was younger than she'd expected. Maybe 30, with sharp features and eyes that seemed to catalog everything about her in seconds. His I&T suit probably cost more than her family's rent for 6 months. 5 years of minimum wage work doesn't equal 200,000, he said. "Then tell me what does." Something flickered across his face. Surprise, maybe. People probably didn't talk back to him often. "You'll live in my house," he said slowly. "You'll be available whenever I need you. You'll handle certain tasks that require discretion. No questions asked, no police, no running." "For how long?" 3 years. "And your father's debt is cleared tonight." Samuel started protesting loudly, but Ji-Hoon made a gesture, and 2 men escorted him out. Cassie watched her father disappear through the door, his eyes desperate and apologetic. "Do we have a deal?" Ji-Hoon asked. Cassie thought about her mother back in Cameroon, sick and needing treatments they couldn't afford. She thought about her younger brother, Kwame, who'd just started college. She thought about how her father had worked himself to exhaustion trying to give them all a better life. "Yes," she said. "Then go home. Pack 1 bag. Someone will pick you up at 8 tomorrow morning." Ji-Hoon returned to his papers, like she'd already disappeared. "And Miss Okafor, don't make me regret this." The apartment felt different when Cassie got back that night. Her father was already there, cleaned up and bandaged, and he grabbed her into a hug that made her ribs ache. "You shouldn't have done that," he whispered. "You don't know what kind of man he is." "I know he was going to kill you," Cassie replied quietly. "So, yeah, I did what I had to do." Kwame helped her pack the next morning, his hands shaking as he folded her clothes. 3 years is a long time, Ada." "It'll go fast," she lied. The car that picked her up was black and expensive, with windows so dark she couldn't see inside. The driver didn't speak to her at all during the 30-minute drive to a gated community in Buckhead. The houses here were massive, the kind she'd only seen in movies. Ji-Hoon's house was modern and cold-looking, all glass and steel in sharp angles. A woman, maybe in her 50s, met Cassie at the door, her expression neutral. "I'm Mrs. Chen. I manage the household. Your room is upstairs, 3rd door on the left. Mr. Kang expects you presentable for dinner at 7. No jeans, no sneakers." She handed Cassie a folder. "These are the house rules. Read them. Follow them. We don't have problems here." The room was bigger than her entire apartment had been. It had its own bathroom with a tub deep enough to swim in and a closet already filled with clothes in her exact size. That should have been comforting, but instead it made her skin crawl. How much had Ji-Hoon already known about her? The rules were simple but absolute. Don't enter Ji-Hoon's office without permission. Don't ask about his business. Don't leave the property without approval. Don't contact family more than once a week. The list went on. Dinner that first night was awkward and silent. Ji-Hoon ate methodically, like it was just another task to complete. Cassie pushed food around her plate. Some kind of Korean dish she didn't recognize, but tasted expensive. "You're not eating," Ji-Hoon observed. "Not hungry. You'll need your strength. Tomorrow you start work." "Doing what exactly?" Ji-Hoon set down his chopsticks, studying her again with that intense gaze. "I have several legitimate businesses. Restaurants, import companies, real estate. You'll help manage the paperwork for the restaurants. You said you're good with numbers." "I am. We'll see." The next 3 months were brutal. Cassie worked 12-hour days sorting through receipts, invoices, and financial records for Ji-Hoon's restaurant chain. The numbers told stories if you knew how to read them, and she started seeing patterns that didn't make sense. Money going places it shouldn't. Payments to vendors that didn't exist. She kept her mouth shut like the rules said. Ji-Hoon was barely around those first months. He'd disappear for days and come back looking exhausted, smelling like cigarette smoke and expensive whiskey. When he was home, he'd lock himself in his office until late into the night. But slowly, things shifted. It started small. Ji-Hoon began having his coffee the way she made it. 3 sugars, heavy cream, even though she'd never asked how he liked it. She'd just noticed him making it that way once and remembered. He'd paused when Mrs. Chen served it to him one morning, then looked at Cassie across the breakfast table. "You told her how I take it?" "Yeah. Figured it'd save time." "Thank you," he said quietly. The words felt strange coming from him, like he wasn't used to saying them. One night, Cassie couldn't sleep and went downstairs for water. She found Ji-Hoon in the living room with financial reports spread everywhere, his hair disheveled and his tie loosened. He looked almost human. "The Peterson account doesn't balance," she said before she could stop herself. Ji-Hoon's head snapped up. "Excuse me." "Sorry. I noticed it earlier. The Peterson restaurant shows supply orders that don't match the inventory counts. Either someone's stealing or the orders are fake." She waited for him to tell her to mind her business. Instead, he gestured to the couch. "Show me." They spent 2 hours going through the records. Cassie's suspicions were right. The manager at the Peterson location had been creating fake orders and pocketing the difference. Thousands of dollars over 6 months. "How did you catch this?" Ji-Hoon asked when they'd finished. "The patterns were wrong. Numbers tell stories if you listen." Something shifted in his expression. Respect, maybe. "You're wasted on basic bookkeeping. So give me something harder. Careful what you wish for." But the next day, Ji-Hoon moved her to his home office. She'd be working directly with him now, handling the financial oversight for all his legitimate businesses. It meant longer hours, but also meant she'd see him more. That's when she started noticing things. The way he'd rub his temples when he was stressed. How he'd switch to Korean when he was on the phone with his family, his voice getting softer. The scar on his left hand that he'd unconsciously touch when he was thinking hard about something. And he started noticing her too. "You haven't called your family this week," he said one Sunday morning. "Didn't have time." "Make time. Use the office phone. Talk as long as you need." Cassie stared at him. "That's not... The rules say once a week for 15 minutes. I'm changing the rules." He stood up from the breakfast table. Family is important. I won't be the reason you lose touch with yours." Her father cried when she called. Her mother asked 100 questions in calm that made Cassie's heart ache for home. Kwame told her about his classes and his new girlfriend and how much he missed her cooking. When she finally hung up 3 hours later, her face was wet with tears she hadn't realized she'd shed. Ji-Hoon was in the hallway. She didn't know how long he'd been standing there. "Better?" he asked. "Yeah. Thank you." "Stop thanking me for basic human decency," he muttered, but there was something almost gentle in his voice. The weeks turned into months. Cassie learned the rhythms of Ji-Hoon's life, the way he'd work until he nearly collapsed, how he'd skip meals when he was focused, the nightmares that sometimes had him pacing the halls at 3 in the morning. She started leaving food in his office when he forgot to eat. He started making sure she took breaks during long work sessions. It became a quiet dance between them, neither acknowledging what was happening but both participating anyway. Then Ji-Hoon's mother came to visit. Mrs. Kang was elegant and cold, her designer clothes and perfect makeup hiding what Cassie quickly realized was a deeply cruel woman. She looked at Cassie like she was furniture. No, worse than furniture, like she was dirt. "This is the girl who's working off her father's debt?" Mrs. Kang asked in English, though her tone suggested she knew Cassie could understand Korean too. "Yes," Ji-Hoon said carefully. "She's living here? In your home?" "She works here. It's practical." Mrs. Kang's laugh was sharp. "People will talk, Ji-Hoon. You know how our community is. Having some African girl living in your house, what will people think?" "I don't care what people think." "Well, you should. You're not married. You're 30 years old. Mrs. Park's daughter, Hae-won, would make an excellent wife. Her family is connected. She understands our culture. Mother." Ji-Hoon's voice went hard. "This conversation is over." But it wasn't over. Not really. Hae-won showed up 2 days later, all practiced smiles and designer clothes. She spoke perfect English with a California accent and treated Cassie like she was invisible. "Ji-Hoon, darling, it's been too long," Hae-won said, kissing his cheek like she had every right to. "Your mother told me you've been working too hard. I thought I'd take you to dinner. There's this new Korean fusion place in Midtown that's supposed to be amazing." "I have work," Ji-Hoon said flatly. "You always have work. Come on, for old time's sake." Cassie watched Ji-Hoon's jaw tighten. "Fine. One dinner." They left together, Hae-won's hand possessive on his arm. Cassie told herself the tight feeling in her chest was just indigestion, told herself she didn't care, told herself she was just the hired help anyway. She was lying. Ji-Hoon came back from dinner at midnight, loosening his tie as he walked through the door. Cassie was still up, working on the quarterly reports in the living room because her room felt too small suddenly. "You're still awake," he said, surprised. "Yeah, needed to finish these." He sat down on the opposite couch, running a hand through his hair. "Hae-won is persistent." "Seems like it. We dated years ago. My mother never got over it ending." Cassie kept her eyes on her laptop. "None of my business." "No, I suppose it's not." But he didn't move, just sat there watching her work. She spent the entire dinner talking about her life, her accomplishments, her family's connections. She didn't ask me a single question about my work. Didn't notice when I ordered the wrong dish because I was distracted. Didn't. He trailed off. "Didn't what?" Cassie asked, despite herself. "Didn't know how I take my coffee," he finished quietly. The air between them felt charged, suddenly. Heavy with something neither of them was ready to name. "I should go to bed," Cassie said, closing her laptop. "Wait." Ji-Hoon stood up. Thank you. For the work you do. I know I don't say it enough. You pay me with my father's freedom, that's enough." "Is it, though?" The question hung there between them. Cassie didn't have an answer, so she just nodded goodnight and went upstairs. But things had shifted again. Now when Ji-Hoon looked at her, there was something different in his eyes, something warm and complicated and maybe a little bit scared. Hae-won kept coming around, always with some excuse. She'd bring lunch, suggest coffee, show up at the house with some problem only Ji-Hoon could solve. And every time, Cassie felt that tightness in her chest get worse. "You should tell her you're not interested," Cassie said one afternoon after Hae-won had finally left. Ji-Hoon looked up from his desk. "What?" "Hae-won. You should tell her you're not interested instead of just tolerating her. It's complicated. It's really not. You either want to date her or you don't. My mother expects." "Who cares what your mother expects?" The words came out sharper than Cassie intended. "You're 30 years old, Ji-Hoon. You can make your own choices." His expression went carefully blank. "Like you chose to work for me?" The words hit like a slap. Cassie felt her face go hot. "That's different, is it?" "You know it is. I chose this to save my father. You're letting someone else control your life because it's easier than standing up for what you actually want." "And what do you think I want?" Ji-Hoon asked, his voice dangerously quiet. Cassie opened her mouth, but nothing came out, because she knew what she hoped he wanted. But hope was a dangerous thing. "That's what I thought," Ji-Hoon said, turning back to his computer. "This conversation is over." Cassie left his office feeling like she'd swallowed glass. They barely spoke for 3 days. Cassie did her work and left reports on his desk without a word. Ji-Hoon disappeared into meetings and came home late. The house felt cold again, like it had those first weeks. Then her brother called. "Ada, it's Mama," Kwame said, his voice breaking. "She's in the hospital. They found something. They think it might be cancer, but they need to run tests and it's expensive, and Papa already used most of his savings on the debt, and I don't know what to do." "How much?" Cassie asked, her heart pounding. 15,000 just for the tests. More if she needs treatment." Cassie didn't have $15,000. She had nothing. Her work here didn't come with a salary, just the promise that her father's debt would be cleared at the end of 3 years. She hung up and just sat there on her bed, staring at the wall. Her mother might be dying and she was trapped here. Useless. There was a knock on her door. "Come in," she said dully. Ji-Hoon entered, his expression concerned. "Mrs. Chen said you got a call. Is everything okay?" "No. Nothing's okay." And suddenly, she was crying. Big, ugly sobs that she couldn't control. "My mother's sick and I can't help her. I can't do anything. I'm just stuck here working off a debt that's not even mine while my family falls apart." She felt Ji-Hoon sit down next to her on the bed. Not touching, just present. "What does she need?" he asked, quietly. "Tests, maybe treatment. Money we don't have." "How much?" 15,000 for the tests. I don't know about the rest." Ji-Hoon was quiet for a long moment. Then he said, "I'll take care of it." Cassie's head snapped up. "What?" "I'll cover the medical expenses. All of them. Whatever she needs." "I can't. That's not part of our deal. I can't ask you to—" "You're not asking. I'm offering." He finally looked at her, and there was something raw in his eyes. "You were right the other day. I let people control my life because it's easier, but you sold yourself into 3 years of servitude for your father. You're willing to sacrifice everything for your family. That's not something I take lightly. Ji-Hoon, let me do this. Please." Cassie didn't know what to say, so she just nodded. He stood up to leave, then paused at the door. "And Cassie, I'm sorry for what I said. You're not. This situation isn't fair to you. I know that." After he left, Cassie called her brother back with shaking hands. "The money's coming. Mama's going to get the tests." Kwame cried. Cassie cried. And for the first time since she'd come to Ji-Hoon's house, she felt like maybe, just maybe, things might be okay. The test results came back 2 weeks later. Not cancer, but a serious infection that needed aggressive treatment. Ji-Hoon paid for everything without hesitation. When Cassie tried to thank him, he just shook his head. "Family is everything," he said simply. After that, something fundamental shifted between them. The walls they'd both been maintaining started to crumble. They'd work side by side in his office, and their hands would brush, reaching for the same file. They'd argue about bookkeeping methods and somehow end up laughing. They'd share late-night meals when they were both too tired to pretend they didn't enjoy each other's company. Ji-Hoon started telling her things. About his childhood in Seoul, about his father who died when he was 20, leaving him to take over businesses he didn't understand. About the choices he'd made that he wasn't proud of, the people he'd hurt, the lines he'd crossed. "I'm not a good man," he said one night over leftover Korean fried chicken in the kitchen. "You paid for my mother's treatment," Cassie replied. "That seems pretty good to me. I've done things, terrible thing, to build this empire. The legitimate businesses are just a front. You know that, right?" "Yeah, I figured." She'd seen enough of the books to know where the real money came from. But people aren't just one thing, Ji-Hoon. Maybe you've done bad things, but you're also doing good things now. That counts for something. He looked at her like she'd said something revolutionary. "How do you do that?" "Do what?" "See the best in people even when they don't deserve it. My mama always said everyone's fighting battles we can't see. Maybe if we're kind to each other, those battles get a little easier." Ji-Hoon reached across the table and took her hand. It was the first time he'd touched her deliberately, and Cassie felt electricity shoot up her arm. "You're extraordinary," he said softly. "You know that?" "I'm really not." "You are to me." They sat there holding hands across the kitchen table, surrounded by empty chicken boxes and cold tea, and Cassie felt something inside her chest crack open. This was dangerous. This was stupid. This was everything she shouldn't want. But she wanted it anyway. The next morning, Hai-Won showed up unannounced with Ji-Hoon's mother. Mrs. Kang swept through the house like she owned it, critiquing everything from the furniture to the lack of proper Korean decorations. "Ji-Hoon, we need to discuss your future," Mrs. Kang announced over the breakfast Mrs. Chen had hastily prepared. "Hae-won's father has connections with the Park Group. A marriage alliance would be very beneficial for your business expansion in California." "I'm not interested in a marriage. Alliance," Ji-Hoon said coldly. "Don't be difficult. You're 30 years old. It's time to settle down with an appropriate wife." "Appropriate according to whom?" "According to our family, our culture, our community." Mrs. Kang's eyes flicked to Cassie, who was standing in the doorway. "According to everyone who matters." "Mother, is this about her?" Mrs. Kang's voice went sharp. "Please tell me you haven't developed some ridiculous attachment to the help." The silence that followed was deafening. Cassie felt her face burn. She turned to leave, but Ji-Hoon's voice stopped her. "Cassie, stay." "Ji-Hoon, don't be absurd," his mother said. "No, you're the one being absurd." Ji-Hoon stood up, his expression harder than Cassie had ever seen it. "Cassie is not the help. She's brilliant, she's kind, she's sacrificed everything for her family. She's worth 10 of anyone you'd try to match me with." "She's African," Mrs. Kang hissed. "She's beneath you. Get out." "What?" "Get out of my house. Now. And take Hae-won with you." Mrs. Kang stood up, her face white with fury. "If you choose her over your family, over your culture, over everything you should be, you're making a grave mistake." "Then I'll make it gladly." "Get out." After they left, the house felt like a bomb had gone off. Ji-Hoon stood in the dining room with his hands shaking, staring at nothing. Cassie walked up to him slowly. "You didn't have to do that," she said quietly. "Yes, I did." He turned to look at her. and there was something fierce in his eyes. "I'm done letting other people tell me how to live. I'm done pretending I don't—" He stopped. "Don't what?" Cassie whispered. "Don't care about you. God help me, Cassie. I care about you so much it terrifies me." The world seemed to tilt. Cassie felt like she was standing on the edge of a cliff, about to jump. "I care about you too," she admitted. "But it's complicated. I'm still working off a debt. There's a power imbalance here and the debt is cleared." Cassie froze. "What?" "As of today, your father's debt is paid in full. You're free to go whenever you want." "But it's only been 6 months. We agreed on 3 years." "I don't care what we agreed on." Ji-Hoon stepped closer. "I won't keep you here through obligation. If you choose to stay, I need it to be because you want to, not because you owe me anything." Cassie's mind was spinning. She could leave. Right now. She could go home to her family, go back to her regular life, forget any of this ever happened. Except she didn't want to forget. She didn't want to leave. "What if I stayed?" she asked. "Then I'd probably spend every day trying to prove I deserve you," Ji-Hoon said, his voice rough with emotion, "and probably failing. You already deserve me." She reached up and touched his face, feeling the tension in his jaw. "We deserve each other. Maybe that's enough." He turned his head and kissed her palm. Soft and reverent and full of promise. "Stay with me," he whispered. "Not as an employee, not as someone working off a debt. Just stay." "Okay," Cassie breathed. "Okay, I'll stay." The next few weeks were strange and wonderful and terrifying all at once. Cassie was no longer an employee, but she wasn't exactly sure what she was either. Ji-Hoon didn't push. He just let things evolve naturally between them. He started taking her out. Real dates, not just working dinners. They went to a Korean barbecue place in Duluth where he taught her how to grill meat properly. They walked through Piedmont Park and he told her stories about his childhood that made her laugh until her sides hurt. They spent a Sunday afternoon at the High Museum where Cassie discovered Ji-Hoon had a secret love for Impressionist paintings. "I didn't expect that," she teased, watching him study a Monet. "What did you expect?" "I don't know. Something darker, probably. More cynical." "I see enough darkness in my work," he said quietly. "Art reminds me there's beauty too." He bought her things. Not in a showy way, but in a thoughtful way that made her heart ache. A cookbook of Cameroonian recipes when he noticed her missing her mother's cooking. A laptop to replace her battered old one. A necklace with a small pendant shaped like a bird because she'd mentioned once that her grandmother used to call her Little Bird in calm. "You don't have to buy me things," she protested. "I know I don't have to. I want to." He fastened the necklace around her neck, his fingers gentle. "Let me spoil you, Cassie. You've spent so long taking care of everyone else. Let someone take care of you for once." It was hard to let herself be taken care of. Cassie had been independent for so long, carrying her family's burdens, that accepting help felt almost wrong. But Ji-Hoon was patient. He didn't push her to accept more than she was comfortable with. Her family knew something had changed. Kwame asked pointed questions about her employer. That made her blush. Her mother kept suggesting she come home for a visit, concern evident in her voice even across the miles. "I'm okay, Mama," Cassie insisted during one of their weekly calls. Better than okay, actually. "This man, he's good to you?" "Very good." "Then I want to meet him," her mother said firmly. "If he's important to you, he's important to us." That conversation led to a slightly panicked discussion with Ji-Hoon about whether he was ready to meet her family. They'd only been, whatever they were, for a few weeks. But he surprised her. "I'd love to meet them," he said simply. "Your family is part of who you are. I want to know all of you." So they planned a video call. Cassie warned her family that Ji-Hoon was Korean, that he was older, that his job was complicated. Her father, who'd remained silent about the whole situation, finally spoke up. "He cleared my debt and paid for your mother's treatment," Samuel said. "That speaks louder than anything else." The video call was chaotic and wonderful. Kwame interrogated Ji-Hoon about his intentions like he was Cassie's father instead of her younger brother. Her mother asked about his family and frowned when he admitted they weren't speaking anymore. Her father studied Ji-Hoon with sharp eyes before finally nodding his approval. "You make my daughter happy," Samuel said in his careful English. "That's what matters." After the call ended, Ji-Hoon looked drained but pleased. "Your family is intense." "They love me," Cassie said, laughing. "That makes them intense about protecting me. I love that about them." He pulled her close, resting his chin on top of her head. "I love that you have people who fight for you. You fight for me, too." "Always," he promised. But not everyone was happy about their relationship. Word had spread through the Korean community in Atlanta, and Ji-Hoon's business associates were divided. Some didn't care, but others made their disapproval clear. Partners suddenly became unavailable for meetings. Investors pulled back. Old friends stopped calling. Ji-Hoon acted like it didn't bother him, but Cassie could see the strain. He'd come home from meetings with his jaw tight and his shoulders tense. He'd lock himself in his office for hours, trying to salvage business relationships that were crumbling because he dared to choose love over tradition. "This is my fault," Cassie said one night, finding him on the balcony with a glass of whiskey. "What is? You're losing everything because of me." Ji-Hoon turned to look at her, his expression fierce. "I'm not losing everything. I'm losing people who only valued me for what I could give them or who I could marry. That's not the same thing. But your business will survive. I built it once. I can rebuild it if I have to." He set down his glass and pulled her into his arms. "You're worth more than any business deal. You're worth more than their approval. Don't ever think otherwise." Cassie buried her face in his chest, breathing in his familiar scent. "I just don't want you to regret choosing me. Never. Not even for a second." He kissed her forehead, soft and sweet and full of promise. It had become their thing, these gentle kisses that said everything words couldn't. Forehead kisses when he left for work, hand kisses when he wanted to make her smile, cheek kisses when he was trying to be playful. They hadn't kissed on the mouth yet. It felt like a line they were both waiting to cross, saving it for when they were absolutely sure this was forever. Then Ji-Hoon's mother made her move. She couldn't touch Ji-Hoon directly anymore. He'd made it clear she wasn't welcome in his life. But she could touch his business. Mrs. Kang had connections throughout the Korean community, and she used every single one of them. Suppliers suddenly refused to work with Ji-Hoon's restaurants. The bank that held his business loans called them in early. Inspectors showed up at his properties citing violations that had never existed before. It was systematic and brutal and designed to destroy everything he'd built. "She's trying to force your hand," Cassie said, watching him sort through yet another crisis. "She thinks if she makes things hard enough, you'll give in and marry Hae-won. She doesn't know me very well then," Ji-Hoon muttered. But Cassie could see the toll it was taking. He wasn't sleeping. He barely ate. He was burning himself out trying to hold everything together. "What if I talked to her?" Cassie suggested. "Absolutely not. Ji-Hoon, maybe if she met me, if she saw that I'm not trying to destroy your life, maybe she'd back off. My mother doesn't compromise. She destroys anything she perceives as a threat." He looked at her with haunted eyes. "I won't let her destroy you." But the attacks kept coming, and with each one, Cassie felt her guilt grow. She was the reason Ji-Hoon was losing everything. She was the wedge being used to tear apart his life. She made a decision. Without telling Ji-Hoon, she reached out to Mrs. Kang and agreed to meet her at a cafe in downtown Atlanta. She went alone, ignoring the voice in her head that said this was a terrible idea. Mrs. Kang was already there when Cassie arrived, looking immaculate in a cream suit that probably cost more than Cassie's car had. "So the girl finally shows some initiative," Mrs. Kang said coolly. "Sit down." Cassie sat. "I'll get straight to the point," Mrs. Kang continued. "You're a problem. My son has built an empire, and you're causing it to crumble. I'm offering you a way out." "A way out?" $500,000. Take it and disappear from Ji-Hoon's life. Go back to your family, start a business, do whatever you want. Just leave my son alone." The number made Cassie's head spin. $500,000 would change her family's life forever. They could open the restaurant her father had always dreamed of. Her mother would never have to worry about medical bills again. Kwame could finish school without drowning in debt. All she had to do was walk away from Ji-Hoon. "Why do you hate me so much?" Cassie asked quietly. "You don't even know me." "I don't need to know you. I know what you represent. A distraction, an embarrassment, a threat to everything our family has built." Mrs. Kang leaned forward. "My son thinks he loves you, but love fades. What remains is family, culture, legacy. You can't give him any of those things. I can give him happiness. Happiness is a luxury he can't afford. He has responsibilities. He has expectations. He has a destiny that doesn't include some African girl who worked off her father's debt." The words stung, but Cassie forced herself to stay calm. "Does Ji-Hoon know you're offering me money?" "Of course not. He'd be furious. But he'll thank me eventually, when you're gone and he's moved on with someone appropriate." Cassie stood up. "I'm not taking your money, and I'm not leaving Ji-Hoon. Because unlike you, I actually care about what makes him happy, not what makes him look good to your friends." Mrs. Kang's expression went cold. "You're making a mistake." "Maybe. But it's my mistake to make." Cassie walked out of the cafe with her heart pounding. She'd probably just made things worse. Mrs. Kang wouldn't take rejection well. She was right. The next day, someone broke into Ji-Hoon's main restaurant and destroyed everything. Smashed tables, broken windows, graffiti on the walls. The insurance would cover some of it, but not all. It was clearly a message. Then someone leaked false health code violations to the media. The story ran on every local news station. Ji-Hoon's restaurants were filthy, unsafe, disgusting. It was all lies, but the damage was done. Customers stayed away. Reservations got cancelled. Revenue plummeted. "This is because I met with your mother," Cassie confessed, finding Ji-Hoon in his office staring at the news coverage. His head snapped up. "You what?" "She offered me money to leave you. I said no. She's punishing you for my choice." Ji-Hoon closed his eyes, his jaw working. "I told you not to engage with her." "I know, but I thought maybe I could fix things." "You can't fix my mother, Cassie. Nobody can." He stood up, running his hands through his hair. "This is exactly what I was afraid of. She's using you to hurt me." "Then let me go," Cassie said, her voice breaking. "Let me walk away so she'll stop." "No." "Ji-Hoon, you're losing everything." "I don't care." He crossed the room and grabbed her shoulders, his eyes blazing. "I don't care about the restaurants. I don't care about the money. I don't care about any of it if it means losing you. Don't you understand that? But no buts. We'll rebuild. We'll find a way through this. But we do it together." He pulled her close, holding her like she might disappear. "Please don't give up on us. Not now." Cassie wrapped her arms around him, feeling his heart racing against her chest. "I'm not giving up. I'm scared." "Me too," he admitted. "But I'm more scared of a life without you than I am of anything my mother can do." They stood there, holding each other while outside Ji-Hoon's empire continued to crumble. But in that moment, it didn't matter. All that mattered was that they were facing it together. The solution came from an unexpected source. Mr. Hwang was an older Korean man who'd been one of Ji-Hoon's father's closest friends. He'd mostly stayed neutral during the conflict with Mrs. Kang, but he called Ji-Hoon a week after the restaurant vandalism asking to meet. They met at a traditional Korean tea house in Buford. Mr. Hwang poured the tea himself, a gesture of respect that Ji-Hoon recognized. "Your father would be proud of you," Mr. Hwang said quietly. "Standing up for what you believe in, that takes courage. Standing up is easy. Watching everything fall apart is the hard part. Not everything is falling apart." Mr. Hwang slid a folder across the table. "I've spoken with several of our community elders. Many of us remember when your father faced similar resistance. When he married your mother, her family thought he wasn't good enough. Your grandmother made his life very difficult for years." Ji-Hoon stared at him. "I didn't know that. Your mother has conveniently forgotten her own history. But we remember. And we remember that your father's determination eventually won people over. Not because he changed who he loved, but because he proved his love was real." The folder contained signed letters from Korean business owners pledging support for Ji-Hoon's restaurants, promises to resume supply contracts, offers of investment capital. It wasn't everything he'd lost, but it was a start. "Why are you doing this?" Ji-Hoon asked, his voice rough with emotion. "Because some of us still believe in love over politics. Because your Cassie reminds us that happiness matters more than tradition. Because," Mr. Hwang smiled, "because your father was my best friend, and I promised him I'd look after you if he ever couldn't. This is me keeping that promise." Ji-Hoon came home that night with hope in his eyes for the first time in weeks. He told Cassie everything, and she cried while he held her and kissed her tears away. "We're going to be okay," he whispered against her forehead. "We're going to make it through this." And they did. Slowly, painfully, but they did it. The restaurants reopened with new investors. Ji-Hoon rebuilt his reputation one satisfied customer at a time. The Korean community remained divided, but enough people supported them that the business survived. Mrs. Kang never apologized. She cut Ji-Hoon off completely, refusing to speak to him or acknowledge his existence. It hurt. Cassie could see it in his eyes sometimes when he'd get quiet and distant, but he never regretted his choice. "I have you," he'd say when she asked if he missed his mother. "That's enough." 6 months after everything had nearly fallen apart, Ji-Hoon took Cassie back to Piedmont Park. It was the same place they'd walked during their first real date, when everything was new and uncertain. "I need to tell you something," he said as they sat on a bench overlooking the lake. Cassie's heart jumped. "Okay. I've been thinking about the future, about what I want my life to look like." He turned to face her, taking both her hands. "And I can't imagine any future that doesn't have you in it. Not as my employee, not as my girlfriend, as my wife." He pulled out a small box. Inside was a ring, not flashy or huge, but elegant and perfect. A single diamond surrounded by smaller stones that sparkled in the afternoon light. "Cassie Okafor, will you marry me?" The world seemed to stop. Cassie looked at the ring, then at Ji-Hoon's face, and saw everything she'd ever wanted reflected back at her. Love, respect, partnership, hope. "Yes," she breathed. "Yes, 1,000 times, yes." He slipped the ring onto her finger, and then kissed her. Their first real kiss. Soft and sweet and full of promise. When they finally pulled apart, both of them were smiling like idiots. "I love you," Ji-Hoon said. "I should have said it sooner, but I was scared. I'm not scared anymore." "I love you too," Cassie replied, "even when you're grumpy and impossible and work too much. Especially when I'm grumpy and impossible. Especially then." They sat there on the bench as the sun set over Atlanta, planning a future that neither of them had imagined 6 months ago. A future that would blend their cultures, their families, their dreams. It wouldn't be easy. Nothing worth having ever was. But they'd face it together. Cassie called her family that night, and their screams of joy nearly broke the phone. Her mother cried happy tears. Her father kept saying, "I knew it, over and over. Kwame demanded to be in the wedding and threatened to fight anyone who tried to stop him. "We want to meet him properly," her mother insisted. "In person. You'll bring him to Cameroon?" "Of course, Mama, as soon as we can arrange it." Planning the wedding was its own adventure. Ji-Hoon wanted a traditional Korean ceremony, but also wanted to honor Cassie's Cameroonian heritage. They decided to have 2 ceremonies, one in Atlanta for Ji-Hoon's friends and supporters, and one in Cameroon for Cassie's family. The Atlanta ceremony was held at a beautiful venue in Alpharetta. Mr. Huang walked Ji-Hoon down the aisle since his mother refused to attend. Several of Ji-Hoon's business associates showed up, their presence a quiet show of support. Cassie wore a beautiful white dress for the main ceremony, then changed into a traditional hanbok for the Korean portion. When Ji-Hoon saw her in the hanbok, his eyes went soft. "You're breathtaking." "It's the dress," she said, blushing. "It's you. It's always been you." They served both Korean and Cameroonian food at the reception. Guests mingled awkwardly at first, but food has a way of bringing people together. By the end of the night, everyone was laughing and dancing and celebrating love's ability to bridge any gap. The Cameroon ceremony happened 3 weeks later. Cassie's entire extended family showed up. Aunts, uncles, cousins she hadn't seen in years. Ji-Hoon learned traditional dances and wore Cameroonian clothes and tried his best to keep up with conversations in calm. "Your husband is trying very hard," Cassie's grandmother whispered during the reception, watching Ji-Hoon attempt to dance with her cousins. "He's a good man, Grandmère," Cassie replied. Yes, he is. You chose well, little bird." They spent their honeymoon traveling through Cameroon. Ji-Hoon fell in love with the country, the vibrant markets, the stunning landscapes, the warmth of Cassie's people. He talked about maybe opening a restaurant in Yaoundé someday, blending Korean and Cameroonian cuisines. "We could split our time," he suggested one evening as they sat on the porch of her family's home. 6 months here, 6 months in Atlanta. Build something in both places. "You'd really want that?" "I want whatever lets me be with you," he said simply. "Geography doesn't matter. You're my home now." When they returned to Atlanta, Ji-Hoon's businesses were thriving again. He'd restructured everything, brought in new partners, expanded into different markets. The crisis his mother had created had actually forced him to innovate and grow in ways he wouldn't have otherwise. "Maybe I should thank her," he joked one morning over breakfast. "Let's not go that far," Cassie replied, laughing. They'd moved into a new house, something they'd chosen together, not something that carried old memories or old pain. It was smaller than Ji-Hoon's previous place, but warmer, more like a home and less like a showcase. Cassie had started her own consulting business, helping small restaurants with their financial management. She was good at it, and word spread quickly. Soon she had more clients than she could handle. "I'm proud of you," Ji-Hoon said, watching her work one evening. "Building something that's entirely yours." "I learned from the best." "You learned how to spot creative accounting from me, the integrity and work ethic. That's all you." Life settled into a comfortable rhythm. They worked hard, laughed often, argued sometimes, but always made up. They hosted dinners that mixed Korean and Cameroonian friends. They video-called both their families weekly. They built a life that was messy and imperfect and absolutely perfect at the same time. 1 year after their wedding, Hai Wan showed up at Ji-Hoon's office. Cassie happened to be there, working on tax documents for the restaurants. "I wanted to apologize," Hae-won said stiffly. I let myself be used by your mother. I should have known better." "Why are you here now?" Ji-Hoon asked, his tone neutral. "Because I got engaged recently. And my fiancé asked me why I'd been so bitter about you. I didn't have a good answer." She looked at Cassie. "You love him?" "I never actually loved him. I loved the idea of him, the status, the merger of families. But I never knew him the way you clearly do." "Thank you for saying that," Cassie said quietly. After Hae-won left, Ji-Hoon pulled Cassie into his arms. That was big of her. It was. People can surprise you sometimes. "You surprise me every day," he murmured, kissing her forehead. "Best surprise of my life." 2 years into their marriage, Mrs. Kang reached out, not to apologize. Cassie doubted she was capable of that, but to request a meeting, just her and Ji-Hoon. "Do you want me to come with you?" Cassie offered. "No. This is something I need to do alone, but thank you for offering." He came back from that meeting looking exhausted but lighter somehow. "She didn't apologize," he told Cassie, "but she acknowledged that I'm happy. She said my father would have wanted me to be happy. That's something. It's a start. I don't know if we'll ever be close again, but at least we're not enemies anymore." Life continued to unfold. There were challenges. There always were. Ji-Hoon's business had bad months. Cassie's consulting work sometimes overwhelmed her. They had disagreements about money and time and whose family to visit for holidays, but they figured it out together. Always together. 5 years after they met, Cassie found out she was pregnant. They sat together in their bathroom, staring at the positive test, both of them crying and laughing at the same time. "We're having a baby," Ji-Hoon whispered, his hand on her still flat stomach. "We're having a baby," Cassie confirmed. "He or she is going to be so loved," Ji-Hoon said. "Korean and Cameroonian and American and absolutely perfect." "Just like us," Cassie teased. "Just like us." Their daughter was born on a rainy Tuesday morning in Atlanta. They named her Grace, Sun-hee. Grace after Cassie's grandmother, Sun-hee from Ji-Hoon's family tradition. She had Cassie's eyes and Ji-Hoon's stubborn chin, and both families completely doted on her. Watching Ji-Hoon hold their daughter for the first time, Cassie thought back to that night 6 years ago when she'd walked into his office and offered herself to save her father. She'd been terrified. She'd had no idea what she was getting into. She'd never imagined she'd find love. She'd never imagined she'd find home. She'd never imagined she'd build a life this beautiful from such desperate beginnings. "What are you thinking about?" Ji-Hoon asked, looking up from Grace's sleeping face. "Just how far we've come," Cassie replied, "from that first night to now." "Best decision I ever made," Ji-Hoon said softly. "Accepting your offer. Best decision I ever made was walking into that office. Even though I was cruel at first. Even though, because you taught me that people can change, that love can grow in the most unexpected places. That family isn't just blood. It's the people who choose to stand by you no matter what." Ji-Hoon stood carefully, still holding Grace, and kissed Cassie's forehead. "I choose you. Every single day, I choose you. And I choose you," Cassie whispered back. Outside their hospital room, Atlanta buzzed with life. 2 families on opposite sides of the world celebrated a new generation, and in that quiet moment, a Korean man and a Cameroonian woman held their daughter and knew that love had won. Not because it was easy, not because everyone approved, but because they'd fought for it, because they'd believed in it, because they'd chosen each other again and again and again. And that was everything. And that's the end of Cassie and Ji-Hoon's story. From enemies to lovers, to parents, to forever. If you loved every minute of this, smash like and subscribe for more. Let me know in the comments if you want more Afro-Asian romance stories, because I can definitely find more. Just say the word.